In this Neverwinter Nights character analysis, we're making our way to some of the prestige classes. Looking at the Shadowdancer. Now, this was an interesting concept in D&D 3.5, 3.x that was carried over and implemented into Neverwinter Nights. This idea in Dungeons & Dragons at the time that you had your primary character class, what you have adventured in, what you've received training in, however the dice have taken you. And then through other role-playing aspects, you kind of jumped into a class that had a number of prerequisites outside of stats, right? For the most part in D&D, you want to qualify for a character. There's going to be certain stat requirements, either straight up, like, look, to play this character, you need these base stats, whether it's rolling it or point by, or you need these base stats to cast certain spells, or just to beat DC checks reliably, you want to have these higher numbers. But you have a lot of give and play, and you can essentially be anything at the start of character creation. But then in 3.5, as you level up and you take certain feats, you enhance certain skills, this opens up prestige classes that layer over. So it's not something that you're going in on level 1. You're going to have a couple of other character classes. Depending on the prestige class, this is very much a tax, where you have to kind of pay certain things, take certain feats that you might not want, but they open up these other classes. So we see this with the Shadowdancer. When you become a Shadowdancer or when you become a prestige class, depends on a lot of factors. How fast and how efficient can you qualify is the first question. So that in mind, with the Shadowdancer, dodge and mobility, tumble, and the stealth combinations are what you need to enter into the class. A monk does this very fast. A rogue does this extremely fast. A bard does this extremely fast. To do it with a fighter, you could. Now, there's going to be armor penalties with your stealth. It takes a lot longer. Not so much on the feat side, because fighters do get a number of feats, but more on the side of just skill points, unless you jack up intelligence and you're going to go for a disarm fighter. But even then, it's a little bit slow because it's cross-class skills and it takes a little bit longer to power up. A wizard, a sorcerer, similar things. And of course, not that you can't take Shadowdancer, and this is true of all prestige classes, that you can't take Shadowdancer layered over another class, but you perhaps start to cut into certain things. An example, Shadowdancer, wizard, or wizard, sorcerer, Shadowdancer. I've played it. I've done it to see what it was like. And of course, the challenge here is you are burning 2 feats that I want to pump into meta magic or supporting my classes. Put aside Dragon Disciple, which is better suited for sorcerer. Although I've done Dragon Disciple, Shadowdancer, sorcerer, playing that full, rather interesting combination. But with that perspective in mind, wizards, you don't get as many feats. So you're burning them and you're burning some skills. Of course, you have intelligence, but if you're intelligence for the attributes, or if you're a sorcerer, it takes a while. So framing this, you might enter in early, you might enter in later. But at some point, you're going to qualify. Now, Shadowdancer is interesting because the primary attribute, the game-changing attribute, literally, is hide in plain sight. The ability to fade out. Neverwinter Nights has role-playing aspects. It has a plot. There are things to discover. There are things to explore. But at its core, it's a combat-based engine built on D&D 3.5, 3.x, 3.0. It's a little bit of a blend of all of it. So what this means is you go into combat, and there's usually various trash mob monsters, or a sorcerer or caster in the back, or a main boss monster. They follow you, they attack you, they try to overtake you. Terrain is important, using things to funnel in, using things to block, attacks of opportunity, sneak attacks. It's very tactical with that engine. Stealth, the ability to stealth up, straight up stealth, and attack either with sneak attack damage or first strike damage, or just to get past the mobs and get to the caster and hit them, that's huge. Often what sometimes will happen is you will move up there, assuming you're not detected, attack, and then you might want to break combat or run away. Well, a lot of the monsters are going to follow you, and a lot of the maps are set up where it's very open or you can't. To hide in plain sight is huge. To gain that ability across first strike, sneak attack, or finesse type characters is huge. So what you'll often see, the fact that as most of us are playing with the full packs, that you can level up all these levels and you can take up to 3 classes. Many players will just dip in, take 1 level of Shadowdancer. There we go. Open that up, hide in plain sight, backed by stealth, backed by the other feats, and maybe you continue on and tumble to jack up your armor class, but you're good to go. That's one way to do it. I like to jump into Shadowdancer in that it offers a lot of abilities up to level 10. Now, there are times where I've gone beyond that, where we've kind of flipped the script, where I will play a rogue or a bard, usually a bard, just to get a little bit of some interesting spell clickies. I'm giving up sneak attack, but the spells and the hide in plain sight and certain magic gear, I won't say it makes up for it. Sneak attack damage is big, but it's still enough alpha. I will take the minimum levels of bard and then pump everything else into Shadowdancer and effectively play a reverse character Shadowdancer type bard, even though you got to take the bard first. That's more for like role playing and fun, because at a certain point, at around level 10 in one of these prestige classes, you really don't gain that much more. You're going to get some expanded feats, you're going to get some new opportunities, but you have all of the main clickies and main things that make the prestige classes so interesting at that level 10. So I plan to do 10 in a prestige, 10 in Shadowdancer, and then the rest in whatever my primary character class is going to be. Now, in exploring that, what's really interesting with the Shadowdancer, you unlock hide in plain sight. Now that we've got the template, while we're leveling up, I'm still putting ranks in tumble, which is going to give me that. It's going to lower my armor class. I'm still putting ranks. Can never have high enough stealth. So we're pushing up into that. Do I burn a stealth feat skilled to gain a +2? I usually don't, right? It's a +2 is a +2, but the feats are better suited for other opportunities with how I want to push and how I want to present. So we kind of put those aside and I focus on other feats. The Shadowdancer with Shadow Days and summoning the Shadow Friend, the Shadow Fiend, is interesting. It's interesting because you can get another clicky friend, another summon, along with a henchman and have a nice little party, which can be useful to kind of drop and hide, right? Drop it, summon it, hide. While it's doing its thing, you get into position and you strike, because that hide in plain sight is very, very helpful. The Daze is kind of an interesting, fun little clicky. I won't say it's game breaking, but it's another clicky in your arsenal. Yes, it's got DC. Yes, you've got saves and all that. But look, that's true of everything. But opening up the various reductions and the various evasions, that stacks awesome over a monk character. That stacks awesome over a rogue. That combined with certain gear, like robes of the old order or other gear, rogue gear that is, or use magic device gear if you're playing a rogue, that stacks with damage reduction. That's where things get crazy. Like fighters soak stuff up with hit points. You're like, I won't say I don't need hit points, but you're almost like, I don't need hit points, bro. Because guys are throwing enhanced fireballs and just I'm suffering no damage. I'm running over traps, no damage. Things are hitting me, and instead of hitting me for 30 points of damage, it's hitting me for like 5 or 8. Your ability to soak, your ability to evade, your ability to ignore, that's an interesting layered ability, combined with hide in plain sight, combined building on whatever your primary class is going to be, monk, rogue, bard, but you could do fighter, you could do sorcerer. So I find the Shadowdancer an excellent and really, really fun class to play. I don't dip in just one level, although you do that, you unlock like 90%. The primary thing is that hide in plain sight. I usually go to level 10 to get all of the bonuses. Beyond that, it would be an exercise in role playing, in my opinion. And I have to kind of explore it and play it out and have that flavor from that perspective. But really, it layers in over that primary class, understanding how prestige classes work, or I should say want to work, in Neverwinter Nights.